Te Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, the prayers of Bhishma. In the previous verse, Bhishma expresses his ecstasy, his joy that Krishna himself has come before Bhishma. Of course, in this culture, everyone understands how important the moment of passing is, that one must try to fix one's consciousness in one's desired destination. And of course, Bhishma's destination is Krishna, so he's very grateful that Krishna himself has come before him. And so at 1923, Bhishma says, Bhaktya Avesha Mano Jasmin Vacha Jannama Kirtayan Tyajan Kalevarang Yogi Muchate Kama Karma Bhi. So this verse says that if a devotee, here called a yogi, which actually yogi really means spiritual practitioner in this context, if a devotee does two things while giving up the body, there will be rewards. So the first thing that a devotee should do when giving up the body, that's the third line, tyajan. Tyajan means giving up, kalevaram, the body, yogi, a devotee. So bhaktya, with devotion, with bhakti, avesha, fixing, mano, the mind, yasmin, in whom, in other words, in Krishna. Vacha, with voice, you can see the connection, English word voice, Sanskrit vacha. So with the voice, janama kirtayan, kirtayan, glorifying, janama, whose name, in other words, Krishna's name, glorifying Krishna's name, and fixing the mind in Krishna with devotion. And in that state where the mind is fixed in Krishna and one is glorifying the names of Krishna, giving up the body, tyajan kalevarang yogi, that devotee muchate is liberated from kama karma vi, from selfish activities. Now, this is very interesting because in other religious contexts, such as, if you, for example, if you study the history of Christianity, there was a extreme concern. I think it's fully justified to use the word obsession. An obsession with being saved. Are you, in fact, it's still there. Are you saved? Have you been saved? So it's not really about loving God. It's about saving yourself. But here in the Vaishnav teachings, now we are listening to Bhishma's teachings, there's not this obsession. There's not this focus with, I want to save myself. It's more, I want to be free from selfishness. Kama karma means selfish action, in this case. So to be freed from selfish actions, because it's understood that if I act selfishly, number one, I will never really be happy because I have interrupted the natural flow of life. The natural flow of life is to offer to Krishna. We receive our life itself from Krishna. We receive everything from Krishna. And then in the act of offering back, we complete the circle of love and devotion. And that's just sanity. That's just sanity. For example, if your parents take care of you and you feel no gratitude, then, you have an emotional problem. So there's something objectively sick about not reciprocating with Krishna all that he's giving us, including our existence, our life, our awareness, our opportunity to elevate ourselves. Everything that we value, everything that is worthy of being valued is a gift of Krishna. And ultimately, the greatest gift is Krishna himself. So therefore, Bhishma here says that he's talking about a spiritual practitioner, a devotee, a yogi. Muchate is freed from selfish actions. Because to be freed from selfish actions, whatever planet you go to is to be on the spiritual platform. And if you're on the spiritual platform, every place is, in a sense, the same. As stated in that verse that Prabhupada once quoted to me, it's from the Bhagavatam, that Narayana Parak Sarve, all of the devotees of Narayan, Narayana Parak Sarve Nakutas Jana Vibhyati, are not afraid of anything. They're not afraid of anything. Swargapa Varga Narakeshu, either in material heaven or in hell or in spiritual liberation. That's the whole range, right? Someone goes to material heaven, someone went to hell, someone is spiritually liberated. Swarga apavarga narakesha pitulyartha darshana. Those who are really devoted to Narayan, to the Lord, they see all this equally, because in all these different situations and places, a devotee just sees Krishna. For example, if a young man, say, falls in love with a girl, or the girl falls in love with the boy, they can be together. If they're together, they can be in a nice neighborhood or maybe a poor neighborhood, or here or there. They hardly notice. They only notice each other. So to be devoted to Krishna is to become free from the duality of that obsessive duality of always trying to find a good situation for oneself. So that's Bhishma's statement. Then he says at 1:9:24, Sadeva Devo Bhagavan Pratikshatam. So he, Deva Devo, God of gods, Bhagavan, the Lord, Pratikshatam, let him wait, may kindly wait. It's interesting. Grammatically, it's very interesting. It's in the imperative form, like he should, like, let him wait. But of course, it's said in a prayerful way. It's not said in an arrogant way, like, okay, Krishna, this is what you have to do now. And so the Sanskrit word pratikshatam, of course, the verb is prati iksh. So I'll tell you what the dictionary says about that verb. To behold, perceive, to look forward to wait for, to expect, to look at. So the Lord should kindly wait, because Bhishma is about to leave this world. He knows that. And in fact, he's going to leave the world in this chapter. And so he's praying that Krishna will wait, so that in his final moment in his Bhishma body, before he leaves that body, that pure soul can have the Lord before him. So he says, may the Lord wait, yavat, kalevaram yavadidang hinomiham, while, yavat means while, I give up this body. Hinomi, I give up, kalevaram, body, idam, this, aham, I. Well, I give up this body. So may the God of gods, the Lord, wait while I give up this body. Literally, it's exactly what it says in Sanskrit. And then he describes the Lord, Prasannaha Saruna Lochan Ulasan Mukambujo. So that's all a compound. You notice the hyphens there. And so the actual word in this compound is, and all the other words kind of describe it. He's just is ambujo, lotus. Anyway, I won't get into all the Sanskrit grammar here. It's a little too much for this situation here, but ambu means water. If you look at the last word, I'm sorry, the first word in the last line, first word of the last line, ambujo. Ambu means water, and ja, which is the original word, is born. So waterborn. Waterborn means lotus. In English and in the other languages, modern languages that are in which we translate Prabhupada's teachings from English, we always say like lotus feet or the lotus face. Interestingly, in Sanskrit, it's reversed. It's the face lotus. So it's actually described. It's not a face. It is a lotus. The lotus of the face. It's kind of a stronger metaphor, and it means the same thing. There's no difference in the meaning. I just thought it was interesting. So here it's describing Krishna's face lotus. Mukha means face. Mukha ambuja. The beginning of the fourth line. So Krishna's lotus face, which is ulasat, Prabhupada translates beautifully decorated. It also means shining, ulasat. Shining forth, beaming. Ulasat means beaming, translated here as beautifully decorated. So the lotus of Krishna's face, which is shining, beaming, effulgent. Aruna Lochana. Lochana means eyes, and Aruna is a color, just like that song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Udila Aruna. So Aruna is precisely the color of the sun when it first rises. It's not just red. We sometimes hear Krishna's eyes are reddish, but if you think of that beautiful color of the sun just as it's first rising above the horizon, that is called Aruna. So in that song, Udila Aruna, when the sun first rose, Aruna. So Krishna's eyes are described here as Aruna Lochana, that Aruna color eyes, which are shining, and his face is shining, gleaming, and with a prasanna hasa. Prasanna hasa. Hasa means a smile. So there's a smile on Krishna's face. Prasanna, Prabhupada translates as cheerful. Prasanna is the same word as prasada. You know what prasada is, we eat it. But prasada means grace or mercy. And prasanna means something like graced or something. And so in the dictionary, prasanna means clear, bright, pure, tranquil, gracious, kind, kindly disposed. So as prasada means mercy, so prasanna means something which is disposed to be merciful in this context. And so Krishna's smile is merciful because there are other kinds of smiles. I mean, you can smile because you're mocking someone or, laughing at them, or you can smile because you don't take them seriously. Like, let's say someone says something foolish, and in that situation, you don't want to personally say that that's really foolish. So you just smile. So there are different kinds of smiles, but this smile is prasanna. It's a smile. It's a merciful smile. It's a smile showing a disposition, an inclination to bless, to give mercy. So, so in that compound, prasannaha saruna lochanola mukambujo. That's all one compound, and it's all describing the lotus, ambujo, of Krishna's face. So it's a beautiful, poetic, and very meaningful devotional description of Krishna's face and his eyes and his smile. And then Bhishma describes Krishna as dhyana patas, the path of my meditation. In other words, to meditate is to meditate on something. You meditate on something. And so therefore, your meditation has a path. It goes somewhere. Your consciousness is going somewhere. Even if it's reflexive in the sense that your consciousness is, you turn it on yourself. Consciousness tries to understand itself, or the conscious soul meditates on the soul, on oneself. But in any case, in this case, obviously the meditation is on God, on Krishna. So Bhishma describes Krishna as the path of my meditation. In other words, the object of my meditation. And even if you know from the Yoga Sutras that one advances to different stages of meditation, as we know. For example, our main meditation is, you could say, japa, for those who do it. And kirtan is supposed to be a meditation and not only a sort of like a pious, sort of primitive rave. I mean, it's actually supposed to be, kirtan's also meditation. So we are always trying to remember Krishna. The whole point of our life is to remember Krishna, and to remember something in a steady, profound way is to meditate on it, dhyana. And so Krishna is the path of our meditation, and not only the path of our meditation in the sense of being the object of our meditation, but also in the sense that we make progress through that meditation. So dhyana pata in Sanskrit, or dhyana patas, can also mean a path, a spiritual path, which is meditation. And so in that sense, we meditate on Krishna in the neophyte stage. And as we advance to higher stages of Krishna consciousness, we continue to realize higher states of knowledge of Krishna and devotion to Krishna. And so that sense, Krishna consciousness, literally being conscious of Krishna, is a path. That's a progressive path. And finally, Bhishma says he wants to meditate on Krishna as Chatur Bhujan, four-armed form, which of course tells us about Bhishma's own devotion. He's a warrior, and he meditates on Krishna in that four-armed form. So that is a profound verse, 19:24. So maybe we'll do one more. Okay, so now Sutta speaks again. Sutta Uvacha. So Bhishma has said, at least for now, he's going to continue speaking actually, but Sutta here wants to say something. So Sutta Uvacha, I mean, he was quoting Bhishma, but now he wants to make his own statement. Yudhistiras tada karnya. So Yudhisthira, hearing that, tada karnya. Karna means ear, and akarnya means hearing that. Shayanam Sharapanjare. So Aprichat, he asked the person who was Shayanam, who was lying down, Sharapanjare, on the bed of arrows. So Bhishma is described here as the person who is lying on the bed of arrows. The word panjara, yes, it can mean a cot, a cot, because India is, so it's, I don't think they had mattresses, the kind we have today, but, it's a cot, place to lie. And so, so Yudhisthira, hearing that, now asked Bhishma, who's lying on that bed of arrows, Shara means arrows, Vividhan Dharman. He asked him about varieties of dharma, multifarious dharmas. Dharma here, of course, is in the plural, which Prabhupada translates that here very literally, multifarious duties, or various religious duties. Aprichat Vividhan Dharman, Rashinam Chanusinbatang. As the rishis, the sages, were literally listening along. So you can, in English, you can say to listen along with someone. That's exactly what it says here. Anu means along. So they're listening along with Yudhisthira. Rashinang Chanu Shinbatang. So let's see, we'll do one more verse, and then if there's any questions, those can be sent. So Purusha Svabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam. Wow. Amnato Bhayalakshanan. This is, so first I'll read Prabhupada's translation, then I'll explain why this verse is interesting. It's a little complex. At Maharaj Yudhisthira's inquiry, Bhishma Dev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of individuals, of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So I think I will do this verse next week, because it's interesting. There's a lot to dig into here. There's a lot here. Vairagya Raga. I mean, you can tell by Prabhupada's translation that it's not a simple verse. And so I think I'll save that for next week, when I can really go deeply into it. So for now, there are some questions, I believe. Let's see. One question: what is the more accurate meaning of Shanta, defined as the marginal state of devotional service, the relationship with the Supreme Lord in neutrality, passive love, awe and reverence, passive love of God, peaceful equilibrium, etc.? So thank you for your question. Well, let's start with the dictionary. Why not? Because even if you have a non-literal meaning, it somehow is derived from the literal meaning. So the word Shanta in the Sanskrit dictionary means appeased, pacified, tranquil, calm, free from passions, undisturbed, gentle, mild, friendly, kind, auspicious, but also means abated, subsided, ceased, like Shanta, something is stopped, it's Shanta, it's extinguished, averted. For For example, there's a phrase in Sanskrit literature, shantam papam, that sin has been stopped or has been, it's almost like, to be honest, like in English, you can say to put something to rest. To put something to rest means to like get rid of it, to stop it, put it to rest. And so that's very much, shanta can be used like that. So rendered ineffective, rendered harmless. For example, a weapon can be shanta. So, I mean, the sense of becoming pacified can be used describing something which is dangerous or harmful, but when it's shanta, it's pacified, it's rendered ineffective, it's stopped, it can no longer do harm. So it's kind of made peaceful in that sense. So in that sense, shanta, come to an end, gone to rest. It can mean deceased. You can say someone is shanta in the sense that they've, well, it's again like in English. These are universal ideas. I mean, what's the most common thing written on tombstones in English? Rest in peace. Or also, of course, in other languages, descanse en paz in Spanish, or Ruhe and Frieden, I forget in German, Friedenheit or something like that. So in different languages, shanta, so to rest in peace, there's a sense of life is a struggle. And so finally someone has gone to rest, or now they can rest in peace. So these are universal ideas which are in Sanskrit and in many other languages. So let's see how it's used in this particular verse. Oh, I'm sorry, not that verse. Sorry, I'm getting a little spaced out here. Radhe Shyam asked about Shanta Rasa. So Shanta Rasa, rasa of course means a flavor. Like in Sanskrit, you could say, masa rasa, which would mean the flavor of the month. But of course, I mean, that expression is not really found in Sanskrit literature. But so rasa means a flavor, a taste. And in that sense, flavor or taste, not merely in the most, let's say, or in the sensorial sense, where you actually taste something like salty or sweet, but it also means the taste of an experience. I mean, we say it in English, like someone has a taste for, he's got a real taste for, I don't know, classical music. So it doesn't mean he literally eats, pianos or something. It means that someone has a real attraction to it, or to really enjoy something, because when you taste something you like, it's sort of a paradigmatic example of just enjoying something in a simple way, that you enjoy the taste of something. And so so Shanta Rasa, if you think of Shanta, if you think of all the meanings of it, which or most of the meanings I've just given you, to be pacified or peaceful, or in the material world, we're struggling. This world is a struggle. I mean, for example, let's say you eat, and then within a short period of time, sometimes remarkably short period of time, you're hungry again. And so hunger is not a pleasant sensation. You can say, I mean, hunger is only pleasant when you've got a nice big plate set out in front of you, like, oh, that's great. Like someone serves you this nice food, or it's about to be served. And let's say someone is, not strictly following our culture, and so is, enjoying the aromas coming from the kitchen. And they say, wow, that's great. I'm really hungry. So hunger, when it creates the anticipation of a guaranteed gratification, then you could say it's kind of pleasant. But otherwise, really, you eat, and then after a little while, you're hungry again. Or let's say we have a good friend or someone that we love, and so we spend a little time with that person, and then that person leaves, and then we again want to have another pleasant social experience. We again want, it's almost like every day we want to see someone whose company we enjoy or talk to someone. And so there's all these wants, there's all these deficiencies, like I'm hungry, I need food, or I'm socially deficient, I need to see someone, I haven't talked to anybody all day, or I haven't talked to anybody in 3 days, and so I need to talk to somebody, a friend, or I need to rest. And so if you think about it, in this world, we're always being assailed by wants, needs. The body has so many needs, physical needs, emotional needs, intellectual needs, because some things confuse us and we want a clear explanation. So there's a sense in which Shanta means like you're just free from all that. You can finally just rest. I mean, even the idea of rest in peace, which is kind of, I mean, it's a little silly, the idea that, the corpse or the cadaver is just like, it's really having a good nap inside that coffin or something. I mean, it's pretty silly, but somehow it caught on. So, but I remember my father worked very, very hard, certainly all of his adult life, he worked very hard. And when he finally retired, he was really, really happy just to rest. And I remember, like, if someone in the family, like, for example, I remember one example that comes to mind, that one of my brothers had to have his car fixed. And so someone had to take the car into the shop and then just wait there for a couple hours. Of course, my brother was young and he's very busy and running around. So he asked my father, who said, yeah, I'd be happy to do it, because for my father, just to sit there and do nothing was really kind of blissful. I mean, he was completely happy. He'd worked so hard that he could just sit and just rest, and he was happy. So Shanta Rasa is an appreciation of Krishna, because you can, if you think about it, like, let's say if you go to a good movie, you don't really have to do anything. I mean, the actors are driving around cars and crashing or jumping off cliffs, or they are falling in love or being disappointed in love, or, all kinds of things are happening in movies. And let's say if you're watching the movie, you can just sit there and enjoy it. You're not in danger. And, I mean, the most difficult thing you have to do is just maybe go out and get another little box of popcorn. And so there's a stage where you really just appreciate someone, and that is a kind of love or devotion. If you really appreciate another person, that is a kind of devotion. So, but it's a devotion which is shanta, which is peaceful, which doesn't involve getting personally engaged in all kinds of things. And if you think about it, for example, between Krishna and the gopis, sometimes there's ecstatic, transcendental fear, like, is Krishna going to come, or will Krishna dance with me, or the cowherd boys, where is Krishna, where did he go, and someone is attacking Vrindavan. But Shanta Rasa is more just that it's a love. It is love. It's the love of appreciation, of just peaceful appreciation. So that's why the word Shanta is used. So one last question. Did Bhishma know that Krishna would see him at that final moment? Well, I'm sure he knew that in a spiritual sense, Krishna would see him, because he knows that Krishna knows everything. But he knew Krishna would see him because Krishna was standing there in front of him. So yes. Therefore, he said, Pratikshatam, Krishna is here now. So he's saying to Krishna, please don't go away. Please stay here. So basically, Bhishma sees Krishna, is asking him to stay there until Bhishma leaves this world. Danya, thanks for listening. How do we reconcile that Bhishma chose not to act in ways that were so detrimental to Krishna's pure devotees, the Pandavas, yet he was still so beloved not only by Krishna, but also by the Pandavas themselves. Yes, this really is the question about Bhishma. And this is the question. And I spent a long time, because I'm working on Mahabharata, and I hope to get the first volume out actually, or at least finish my part and send it to production by Gaur Purnima. If Krishna, with little help from Krishna, or a lot of help from Krishna. But okay, so I've spoken about this before. I'll try to do this briefly, because I've been meditating exactly on this for the last several days, because I am now working on the part of Mahabharata where Bhishma comes and makes his vow that he will never marry, he won't have children, he won't be a king. And so quickly, here's my take on Bhishma. I believe that whether it reflects his actual course of development as a pure devotee, or whether it's just Bhishma playing a part, I think we can definitely trace an evolution in Bhishma's, you could say, moral philosophy, or his, I would say his moral philosophy. For example, when Bhishma, this is sort of a little hint of what's coming in my Mahabharata. When Bhishma makes his terrible vow that he will not marry, he will not have children, he'll give the kingdom. Of course, everyone takes this as, wow, that's amazing, that is so great. And the devas, the demigods, cry out Bhishma. But it's not exactly, to cry out Bhishma is not exactly to say, that's great, that's really wonderful. Because let's look at first of all, the word Bhishma comes from the root BH long I, which means to fear. The Sanskrit word bhaya, fear, comes from the root bhi, and that's the root from which you make the word Bhishma. So the first meanings in the Sanskrit dictionary of Bhishma, it's an adjective which means terrible, or dreadful. And it's also, of course, the son of Shantanu and Ganga. But that's what the word literally means. Bhishma also, as a noun, as an adjective, can mean something as terrible or dreadful. And as a noun, it can mean a horror, horribleness. And so I want to try to, rather than, it's so easy, because all our devotional lives, we've been hearing these stories, and it's very fixed in our mind that the demigods were celebrating, wow, way to go, Bhishma, way to go. And that was great. But I think something else is going on here. First of all, Bhishma at this point is still roughly a teenager. Sometimes he's depicted in Indian movies, or even, maybe in ISKCON art as like a mature adult, but he's actually a teenager. He was brought back, maybe at the very oldest, like 20. I think he was a teenager myself. I think he was very young. And it's also significant that he didn't tell his father where he was going. If you read, because I've read over the Sanskrit, again and again and again, really trying to get every little meaning of every little part of every word. And he doesn't tell his father he's going. And so for a young man, and even though he's a great soul, let's say within Krishna, again, I'm not speculating, did Bhishma really know everything, or was he playing a role in Krishna Leela, or did he really undergo development? That is not for me to say. But what I can say is, a normal young man at that age has very little idea of what life is going to feel like 10 years from now. And not to speak of 20 years from now, or a woman. You know, a young girl can hardly imagine how she's going to see the world as she gets older, or a young boy. And so I believe that in this pastime, Bhishma didn't know exactly what he was doing. I mean, he did. He wanted to serve his father, but and again, I accept Bhishma as a pure devotee, as a great soul, but I'm thinking about, you know, the role he's playing in this pastime. And in crying out Bhishma, the demigods, the devas, are also saying horrible, or that's frightening. What's going to become of this person? And also, there's another way in which it's frightening, because there's a context. There's a cosmic battle going on, because the asuras are invading the earth. They're taking birth as the heirs to great kingdoms, and they're basically taking over the planet. That's why Bhumi eventually went to Brahma, and then they all went to Vishnu. And that's why Krishna is coming. He's not here yet, but Krishna is coming. One avatar has already come, Vyasa, because the earth is being invaded, and it's part of a plan to take over the universe. That's actually what's going on. So the devas were supposed to defend the earth against the asuras, but Bhishma has just given away his power to initiate a defense against the asuras. He's just given that away. So, and we know that Vaishnav kingdoms, like the Kurus were at that point under Shantanu, can be taken over by inheritance by asuras. So when Bhishma vows that he will not be a king, he will just serve the Kuru king, that's very dangerous. To give an example, before Shantanu, who was the most prominent king of his time, the king of kings, the emperor, according to many statements in the Mahabharata, was not the ruler of Hastinapur. Because if you go back one generation, so 2 generations before Bhishma and 1 generation before Shantanu, Shantanu's father, Pratipa, was basically, he was sitting on the bank of the Ganges meditating, practicing yoga. Why does a king do that? Because there was no crime. There was nothing to manage. It was like such a yuga. Again, Mahabharata, you have to read the unabridged Mahabharata. Why? Because this is all happening soon after Parashurama, who killed all the Kshatriyas, and then the Kshatriyas were regenerated by the Kshatriyas, the ladies. There's one sannyasi in ISKCON that says women have no varna, although, anyway, that's a good idea if you don't actually read Shastra. The whole first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is worried about Varna Sankara, marriages which mix Varnas, which would technically be impossible if women didn't have a Varna. How could you have mixed Varna marriages? But anyway, I won't go into that now. So because Parashurama had killed all the Kshatriya men, 21 Trik Saptva, 21 times, 3 times 7, and the Kshatriyas, the ladies, approached the purest Brahmins, who gave them sons, so that the warrior class, the ruling class, could be reconstituted. But the result was you had all these kings whose fathers or grandfathers were these great sages, and so they're very peaceful. And the world was very peaceful. And it's the Mahabharata scribe, it was like such yuga. So you have kings like Pratipa, the Kuru king, he's just meditating. But the problem is, and again, what I'm doing is I am sort of reconstructing the history by taking statements from all these different shastras and putting it all together, and it's like a puzzle. And so I think it's becoming clear. So here's the situation, which is very clearly described in the unabridged Mahabharata, that exactly at the time when these literally Rajarshis are very peaceful, there's no crime, no one lies, no one cheats, there's basically nothing to manage. And so the kings are just becoming yogis. It's precisely at that time when Earth is least suspecting, everyone's guard is down, that the Asuras begin to invade. They begin to take birth in powerful royal dynasties, so that without violating Dharma, and thereby, because by violating Dharma, they're weakening themselves. So it's like they're sort of manipulating that force of Dharma, that cosmic force. So they take birth in royal families and inherit kingdoms. And the best example, that while Pratipa is meditating, someone has to pay attention to this Asura invasion, or sometimes fight when the Asuras manifest. And so Indra, so that task goes to Vasu, who is the king of Chedi, but he becomes the emperor. So that means the imperial power shifted about approximately 500 miles to the south, to the kingdom of Chedi. And that's King Vasu. But then what happens? And so Vasu is so powerful that he can give each of his 5 sons their own kingdom. So he's giving kingdoms away. This is an emperor. His oldest son is Brihadrata, and he gives him the important kingdom of Magadha, which today is the Indian state of Bihar. But then the most powerful of all Asuras, who's not Kamsa, we tend to be Kamsa conscious because we are absorbed in Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. So in Vrindavan Leela, the big Asura is Kamsa. But in the global geopolitical situation, the battle for Earth, there's a much more powerful Asura who's Jarasandha. So Jarasandha, who is in his previous life as an actual card-carrying Asura, was Viprachitti, very powerful Asura general. He takes birth as the son of Brihadrata, as the grandson of Vasu, the emperor. Now, Vasu is the emperor, and therefore his oldest son is going to become the most important king in the world, since he's the oldest son of the emperor. However, now there's a big problem. If he inherits that imperial power, by dharma, by law, he has to pass it on to Jarasandha, who's an Asura. And so you see that there's this powerful Chedi dynasty, which is protecting the world, but the Asuras successfully enter that dynasty, and therefore imperial power can no longer remain in Chedi, because if it remains in Chedi, the Asuras are going to inherit it. And so what happens, the next generation after Vasu, the imperial power must return to Hastinapur, to the traditional capital of the Kurus. And Pratipa has a son who doesn't want to just be a yogi. He wants to fight. I mean, he's ready to go at it. And his name is Shantanu. And then, and this is something which is, again, you have to piece all these things together, but it's all there. And that is, in reconstructing the history, what's the most powerful thing that Shantanu can do, in a sense, to get an alliance? And that is, he marries the daughter of the previous emperor. And so even though Jarasandha is going to inherit a lot of power, especially in Magadha, from the Chedis, who was spread out into various kingdoms, the other Chedi rulers, the other sons of Vasu and their sons, are still fighting for the right cause, at least for a little while longer. And so therefore, Shantanu marries the emperor's daughter, who's named Satyavati. And I spent a lot of time studying Satyavati and who she really is and what she was really doing in a fishing village. And anyway, you'll see it soon, hopefully, in the Mahabharata, because it's really geopolitical stuff. It's not just, having a really bad odor. So anyway, so Bhishma, now let's go back to Bhishma. So that's the historical context. And I think we can't really understand why the Devas said Bhishma, which is terrible, frightening, horrible, unless you understand what he just did. Just as Jarasandha invaded by birth without violating Dharma the great Chedi empire, and therefore is going to inherit supreme power, another Asura could do that with the Kurus. In fact, that actually happens. Later, a few generations later, that actually happens in the case of Duryodhana. And so therefore, Bhishma's vow to give up the kingdom and just serve the Kuru king, the Asuras take advantage of that vow by taking birth in the Kuru dynasty. And of course, the Pandavas are still there because the demigods, through their surrogates, and that's what the Pandavas are, they are surrogates standing in for the demigods, and that's why the battle. So they're fighting for the Kuru dynasty, but in fighting for the Kuru dynasty, which has been restored to imperial power by Shantanu, they're really fighting for the world. And they're fighting for more than that, because whoever controls the world, because the world becomes a battleground between the Suras and Asuras, which is also going to obviously have a huge effect in the universe. So if you look at all of that, Bhishma's decision to renounce his ability to defend the earth from Asuras, unless by good luck, there happens to be a good king in Hastinapur, which for some time happens, but of course, it's not really going to work. Bhishma's decision is going to become a nightmare for the world. Shantanu does marry Satyavati. They have two sons who both die very young. And so Bhishma's decision ends up posing a major existential threat to the Kuru dynasty. And of course, then Satyavati has to reveal that she had a son before her marriage. She reveals it to Bhishma. She had a son, Vyasa, and Vyasa comes, and Pandu is born. Dhritarashtra, of course, is no help at all. And Vidura, because was born not from royal blood, therefore he can't really rule. So it really falls on Pandu, and then he ends up dying not as young as his actually his legal father Vichitravirya and his uncle Chitrangada, and then of course things get so messy at this point. Things are just getting because the Pandavas go back to Hastinapur, but Dhritarashtra won't do the right thing. And so at this point, Krishna has to step in. And it takes you right into, of course, the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. So, but if you look at the entire history, Bhishma's decision to give up his right to be a king, because he was the heir apparent, which means that rather than the heir presumptive. An heir presumptive means that someone will inherit the throne only if certain things happen. An heir apparent means, and I forget, what was the Sanskrit word? Yovaraja. The Sanskrit word, which literally means like the young king. So the Yovaraja, and Bhishma is described as the Yovaraja, which means heir apparent, which means that legally, if Bhishma lives, he will become the next king, and no one can change that. No one can change that. There's no legal way to deny him the kingdom. That's why only, of course, back then he's Devavrata. That's why only Devavrata himself can renounce his right to the throne. No one can take it away from him. That's what, and of course, when the Fisher King, who I don't like a lot, when he told Shantanu, you can have my daughter if my daughter's sons will become king, or one of them will, then Shantanu really didn't have the power to make that happen by Dharma, unless he violated Dharma. And of course, he wouldn't have done that because he'd already promised the throne to his son. So that's why Devavrata Bhishma came and renounced it, because only he could renounce it. But his renouncing it was a gift to the Asuras. So getting back to Danya's question, I see Bhishma as evolving, again, either Leela evolution or actual evolution. And you see that clearly when, because he had said he wouldn't fight with Krishna, but then he does fight with Krishna on the battlefield. So Bhishma was an act-based ethicist or deontological ethicist, which means he felt like Immanuel Kant, and Krishna rejects this because it really is not good, that ethical value, like to say something is morally good or something is ethical, that an action is ethical, the ethical value lies in the act itself, regardless of its consequences, which ultimately, of course, is extremely dangerous. Because Krishna himself states this in the Mahabharata, that if you do something good, like telling the truth, but it leads to all kinds of horrible things, like you reveal to someone where some people are hiding, and then the person you reveal it to is evil and goes and kills the innocent people because you gave them the information, and this is the example Krishna gives, then your so-called virtuous act of telling the truth is actually an evil act, or it's bad, and it's punishable. So Bhishma, this attitude, for example, when Satyavati begged him to marry the widows of Vichitravirya, and he gives this, this dramatic speech, which, if you think about it, is not really such a great thing. He says, basically, even if if all the worlds collapse and the whole universe goes to hell, I will not break my vow. So you can't help thinking, well, Bhishma, isn't the world a little more important than your vow? Of course, the argument would be that, well, if I break my vow, then other people will break their vows. But again, I think we can attribute to most people a little bit of common sense to understand that. I mean, just like, for example, you could say it's a law that you can't break into someone else's home. But what if there's a fire in someone else's home and there are children trapped and the parents are gone, and someone says, you have to break into the home and save the children? No, I can't do that. It's against the law. You can't break into someone's house. Actually, this very takedown of act-based ethics is found in the famous movie Dr. Strangelove, when this English attaché is begging this general who's launched a nuclear war to call the Pentagon and give them the code to call back the nuclear bombers. The whole world's going to blow up, and he doesn't have change for the phone. So there's a Coke machine. So the attaché, who's Peter Sellers, is going crazy and saying, look, the world's going to be destroyed. Just shoot open this Coke machine and get the coins. And then the general says, I can't do that. That's private property. And so it's a spoof on sort of like the deification of capitalism, or the deification of any mundane moral principle where you sort of passively cause or allow much greater evil in the service of some principle. And that's what Bhishma did. That was Bhishma. And on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he had promised he wouldn't fight against Krishna, but he did fight, which means that he broke his vow. So I see that moment as Bhishma finally really understanding that, I think a more serious ethical philosophy. But there's another point. The Bhagavatam, again, putting things together, the Bhagavatam also says that basically on both sides of Kurukshetra, there were good and bad people. So I think it's obvious that some people who fought with the Pandavas did so for their own, perhaps, political or military advantage. Some of them might have done so because if the Pandavas won, they wanted to retain power as asuras. And also, it's just like, for example, when you have some infection in your body produces all these antibodies. When you have some, infection or virus. But once the infection is gone, if your body keeps producing antibodies, you die. It becomes a, I forget the exact name, but it's that's basically what it is. And so when these mighty asuras from higher planets invaded the earth, Krishna brought all these, fight fire with fire, brought all these celestial powers. But the point is that once the asuras were defeated, these very people, like the Yadus and others, would destroy the earth because they were so powerful. And so in that sense, I see Bhishma also as perhaps consciously relieving the earth's burden, because there's a verse in the Bhagavatam where Krishna is meditating and he says that I brought the Yadus to relieve the burden of the earth, but now they themselves have become the burden. And that's why Krishna arranges that fratricidal war in Dwarka. So, or actually not in Dwarka, I think it's outside Dwarka. So in that sense, Bhishma could be consciously serving Krishna, engaged in his mission, knowing the Pandavas are going to win, which he did know because Krishna was there, and just helping to remove all these superhuman warriors, including some asuras on the Pandava side and others, to fully relieve the earth's burden. So in that sense, that's one way I think I'm convinced that's actually what happened. So anyway, there's a lot more to say, but thank you, Danya. And very quickly, how to understand the idea everything is within Krishna's plan when it comes to our free will, because it's Krishna's plan that we have free will. And Krishna knows our inclinations, and therefore he puts the right people at the right place. For example, if you want to sell a lot of your product, you put a good salesman there. If you want to, so you can actually do things. Let's say you own several companies and you actually want one of the companies to go bankrupt because it's costing more than it's worth. So you put all your worst managers there, and the company, in fact, does go bankrupt. So anyway, I won't go into all that now, but it is Krishna's will that we have our free will, and Krishna brings people together in certain ways so that everyone's free will is respected, but things will basically go in the way that they're supposed to go. So that's Paula. So if you ask that question again, perhaps, and next time we can say more about it. So thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for your questions, and went a little late today. And hope to see you, or I hope you'll be here next week. Hare Krishna.